It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
There's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are. And I feel that if we in public television can only make it clear that feelings are mentionable and manageable, we will have done a great service for mental health.
Okay, so we're going to look into this article that has some correlation with the Idaho 4, specifically Kaylee. As we learned through social media, her family, she did have a stalker. She said she had a stalker. Her family mentioned she had a stalker as well. This is my first time recording, so please be kind. And it's going to be a little clunky at first, but I hope to find my groove. And I do have a dog, so he may bark from time to time, unfortunately, but that's what they do. So this article is a article based on intimate partner violence on campus. It's a victim-centered case study. It was published in 2022 from the Journal of Threat Assessment and Management. And this particular case looks at Lauren McClusky. She was a student at the University of Utah in October of 2018, so it's recent. And unfortunately, here in the United States, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, family violence was considered a behind-the-door issue. It was a family problem and police weren't involved. You did have mandated reporters such as teachers, nurses, and doctors. If they suspected that or saw that, they had to report it. They were mandated. But as for police or clergy, not so much. And now over the years, due to a lot of contributing factors, protests, enactments enforced to protect mostly women and children, but that does not exclude men or any other people for that matter. But for this in particular, we're focusing on females due to the nature of the Idaho 4, and in this particular case study that happened in Utah, which is not far from the University of Idaho. So as I said, this happened in October of 2018, and the reason why this is brought up, as I showed in the previous we went over, I showed about Article 9, what that entails, and also with the various ways. Either I just Googled sex offenders in Moscow, Idaho, where I showed you originally, and then I went ahead and showed you on the university website how to get to the sex offender registry as well. I believe there is YouTube community standards that you have to say SA, but this is educational, and as Mr. Rogers said, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. And the reason why this has gone the way it has for as long as it has, and thankfully there has been some progression, is because people don't want to talk about it, but it needs to be spoken about for safety and security. Everyone says for safety and security, but what does that really mean? You have to really know what that means and really see what the triggers are, or what the little subtleties, or what it screams. Because even when people are showing it, they have the bells and whistles, people still are apathetic, don't want to deal with it, don't know how to deal with it, or too afraid to because of the ramifications, which is understandable, but you have more than one persons working on a university to one person. So as it was said, Title IX, for the public significance statements for that, is this case study demonstrates the importance of threat assessment and victim safety planning for intimate partner violence and stalking cases on college campuses. Universities receiving federal funding have a legal responsibility under Title IX to keep members of their community safe from internal and external threats of violence. In order to safeguard campus communities, all students, faculty, and staff must receive regular training on intimate partner violence and intimate partner stalking. Be knowledgeable about resources, what they can do to protect themselves, and must furthermore promote a culture where safety is everyone's responsibility. Definitely promote the culture. It is everyone's responsibility, but you also have to implement it. You can't just talk it. You can't just talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk as well, especially if you're receiving funding about this, and it is a serious, serious matter. And this is near and dear to me. I did get my master's on this. I have worked in youth residential areas. I have worked with youth who have been trafficked, and where I worked, it wasn't really addressed, which really angered me, and I went and got my master's. So here I am. When this case came out, when I first heard about it, a lot of alerts and I just graduated not too soon prior to this, and I wanted to hear a little bit more what was going on. And as time has come, as we've learned more, I am now wanting to bring this out more to further educate, as Mr. Rogers has said. If it's mentionable, it's manageable. So between September 30th and October 22nd, 2018, Lauren McClusky and her friends and family had over 20 interactions with campus officials and security at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City regarding her former boyfriend, Melvin Rowland. And even though with all these interactions, 20, she was still drugged from her car and murdered by Rowland in a parking lot on campus. Obviously, we see there was numerous interactions with officials about intimate partner stalking and violence. The second threat assessment, those sound case management practices and victim safety planning, was severely lacking. None of that was done. And third, the importance, it was federal funding for this matter, and nothing was done. So looking into what IPV is, it's described as physical, verbal, psychological, emotional, sexual, and financial abuse that occur within the context of a current or former intimate relationship. So current or former. Between 1 and 4 college women are victims of intimate partner violence. And in these cases, it can include threatening unwanted contact, following, spying, digital, non-digital communication. And all this just has to invoke an experience of fear. That's reasonable person to experience fear. Both IPV and IPS are gendered crimes, as both have higher impact on women. IPV victims are at high risk of experiencing stalking. Those who have reported it are twice as likely to be murdered or experience a murder attempt. So this is why you need all those extra measures once you say, I'm in a relationship or I was in a relationship. There's abuse, physical, psychological, emotional, and I'm being stalked. And once they report that to officials, police, university, as it says here, when you have reported, it's twice as likely to be murdered or experience a murder attempt. So knowing this, and following the widely publicized instances of targeted violence on college campuses in the United States, threat assessment and management teams, TAMs, was developed to help promote best practices for mitigating such violence. So it's well aware there's a method. They are giving these methods to help promote safety and security. TAMs are designed to collect information on possible threat cases and then work to mitigate or remove the threat. They typically draw from units across campus, including student affairs, resident Greek life conduct, campus safety, health and wellness services, and in some cases, a liaison from local law enforcement. In addition to law enforcement and security specialists, it is important that TAMs include a psychologist, psychiatrist, or at least have access to one. And with this case, questions arise over the missed opportunities law enforcement had when working with the individual of concern, or often overlook areas of importance or improvements in victim interactions. You're going to see some correlations with the Idaho 4 in this case. It furthermore excesses for intervening cultural influences impact the case amount. IPV and IPS. IPV and homicide in particular disproportionately impacts females as they are at a greater risk of experiencing physical and psychological injury, including death. They have found that over 75% of IPV homicide victims are females. In addition, the literature in the field identifies several risk factors for violence and death by current or former intimate partners. So here's here's important information of what that entails. It could be a short courtship. It doesn't have to be long. Extreme jealousy, isolation from friends or family, attempts to monitor or control daily activities, stalking, substance abuse, chronic unemployment, access to a gun, prior instances of domestic violence or dating violence, threats to harm or kill the victim, threats of suicide from the abuser, forced sex, manipulative behavior, visions of grandiosity, profound narcissism, lies about military service, bravery or heroism, exaggerated fear of danger associated with the outside world, or an attempt by the victim to end relationship. So the short courtship is in particular with this case. Concerning the victim, other warning signs that point to IPV include, but not limited to, unexplained bruising, depression, chronic fatigue, changes in personality or appearance, changes in eating or sleeping patterns, decline in self-esteem, increased worry about pleasing, displeasing, or angering the other partner, and consistently checking in with the other partner. So Kaylee's dad, Steve, did mention about noticing any changes in personality or appearance, changes in behavioral patterns. I don't know if that was him reflecting with what Kaylee was going through, or just giving out a general warning that Kaylee may have, and it sounds like she was really close with her family. They had a great relationship. They talked to each other. They were able to communicate with each other. And they were pretty close, and you could tell by the love they had for each other. So he probably knows more about what was going on that campus than, unfortunately, the ones who are paid to do. IPV are psychological as opposed to the more overt physical warning signs. So people tend to want to fall under this umbrella or hide behind this. Well, there was no physical warning signs. Well, the psychological and emotional, as survivors have said, victims have said, is way worse than the actual physical violence. That goes away eventually, whereas the emotional and psychological sticks with you, and that tends to be, it starts small and then it grows and intensifies to the point where you are stuck. Stalking merits further discussion given to close association with IPV. Within the literature, IPV and IPS are positively linked, with over 75% of female homicide victims being associated with prior stalking. So there's a positive correlation of over 75% of female homicides. And here's the resources that are highlighted. Stalking in general is viewed by the CDC as a public health concern, which compared to other forms of violence is a targeted and personal form of violence. It's a targeted attack, a personal form of violence, as the perpetrator is usually someone the victim knows. Usually someone the victim knows. Stalking is also unique in that what may appear as a subtle or harmless, indirectly threatening behavior can be fear-inducing given the context, amount of instances, and duration of the personal intrusion. Such intrusions may include, but not limited to, continuous or excessive correspondence, unwelcomed monitoring behaviors, and public humiliation of the victim, to name a few. Stalking can take many forms, such as physical, following, electronic monitoring, and it can occur by proxy, where a friend or family member of the abuser collects and reports information. Cyberstalking can be difficult to assess, as affiliated behaviors are challenging to specify, but for this article, technology-based abuse was used, and they were able to prove that. The impacts of it, obviously the psychological, and it comes in many forms: depression, anxiety, insomnia, traumatic stress, suicidal thoughts, heightened fear, lower academic efficacy, higher stress. We know that the 3 girls were dean students, but that could have been, and we know that Kaylee did not live there towards the end. We don't know. There is information out there, especially with Truth and Transparency with Lana and other creators on their pages, on their channels, do talk about how they are aware that Kaylee did not live there. She just moved there in August, right before or shortly before the first noise complaint, and she ended up living with her sister for a duration of time as well. And as we know, with her mom saying she was hemming and hawing of going back on campus for that party for being Dylan's +1. So that sounds to me that she had not been there for some time. She had talked to Maddie about getting her new car, and she wanted to show Maddie. So that says there's been a duration of time of absence from that house and absence from that campus. So the role of the TAMs as we went through in higher education, because of having Title IX and the Clery Act, which the University of Idaho does have on their webpage, and it requires higher education institutions to ensure victims of IPV receive written guidance on protecting themselves from future incidences on and off campus resources, and mandates required training for facility, staff, and students, among other things. And there's the resources. Under the regulations, universities must keep all campuses visitors safe from gender-biased violence, sexual harassment, but we're educating here, we have to say it, dating violence, and IPVS, regardless of student, staff, or visitor status. Title 9 also requires that victims receive written documentation on the university and make reasonable accommodations to victims when changes are needed to their living, working, academic, and even transportation needs further for their safety. Which we did see that after this had happened, the university put up those measures. Do we know if they put up those measures when Kaylee was saying it? It doesn't. We don't know if she said anything to the university. It appears that MPD was not aware, but as we look into this article, we don't know. But if you look on their website, MPD, you're going to see some similarities of what Lauren went through with her intimate partner violence, and she was stalked. So here's the timeline for Lauren McClusky. So early September, so Lauren met Roland at London Bell Bar, where he worked as a bouncer. Okay, this is early September, and as you recall, this happened in October. So it was a short relationship, a violent relationship. And that's what we were saying prior, that it could be a short relationship. You don't need, doesn't have to be months or years. It can be short. End of September, she started expressing unhappiness with her relationship to her friends, and Roland was becoming controlling and prevented her from seeing them. Roland told Lauren that he was stalking her to indicate he was always watching. So this is a big thing when they start controlling and preventing her from seeing them. Now, when I was hearing about Maddie and Kaylee, how there were chunks of time where Kaylee was not on social media in high school and in college, with the great investigative work by Lana on Truth and Transparency, these 6 months chunks, which she was dating Jack at that time. And also what makes alerted me as well is that when Jack had lived in Moscow, Maddie and Kaylee go to that university where he lives. And those two are separated in their sororities. They're not in the same one, which sounds like through interviews through Chronicles of Olivia, the family said that, they were close, but they had room for other people. So that could have been their choice, or was it calculated? September 26, Lauren's friends noticed a visible change in her demeanor and physical appearance, including bruising in her body. September 30th, Lauren's friends met with a graduate housing advisor to express their fears for Lauren's life because Roland would bring a firearm to campus. They informed the advisor that they knew Roland stalked Lauren and that he made them feel uncomfortable as he was stalking them when they were together with Lauren. This incident was not entered into the university record system, and it was not shared with the university behavioral intervention team, or campus security, or local police. At this time, resources on IPVS should have been provided to the students, along with the information on next steps within the university to address this matter. As we know about Kaylee having a stalker that was mentioned by the store manager, the vape shop, and we also heard Kaylee's dad, sister, and mom talk about how Kaylee took all these extra measures to make sure that you always had 1 or 2 people with you. You went to well-lit areas. You went to known locations. They had a private driver to take him there and back that they knew of. And Steve said out loud several times to make sure that they were chaperoned. So those are a lot of extra measures that they themselves implemented. But that alerts me that they had to do that on their own. And we have heard that MPD was not aware. They're on the record saying that they were not aware. October 1st, the graduate advisor reported information to university housing officials. No documentation was filed as the reporting system was down, because the reporting system was down. Okay. At this time, a Title IX coordinator should have been engaged along with the behavioral intervention team on campus and the police. Lauren should have been interviewed about her experiences. Lauren and her friends should have also been provided with IPVS resources. October 3rd and 8th, Lauren's situation was received by university conduct and housing offices. The housing officials did not use the information to engage with Lauren, stating it was a privacy matter, and recommended a graduate advisor wait until Lauren sought help, which clearly she has. Instead, the housing officials focused their attention on housing violations as the firearm policy. At this time, housing officials determined the situation should be documented. Per Title IX, outreach with Lauren should have occurred, and she should have been provided with resources on what the campus could do to support her, as well as what could be done by local police to help ensure her safety. Here's that privacy. That's a family member, that's you and your boyfriend matter, ex-boyfriend matter. That sounds like something that you need to deal with, and that is not going to fly no more. Hence this article. Hence, the importance of outrage, of just basic and security, safety and security. And especially if you have Title IX, it is more than not acceptable because you're receiving fundings to make sure all of this is done. October 5th through 9th, during the fall break, Lauren went to Pullman, Washington to visit family and friends and discovered Roland's criminal past through an internet search. The search revealed that Roland was a violent felon and convicted sex offender working at a local bar, London Bell, as a bouncer. Why is a sex offender working at a bar at a university with young students? Yes, 21, but that is considered, in medical terms, late adolescence is considered between 19 and 23. You have early, middle, and late. They are over 18, but that does not mean that not every female has the ability or the tools to protect themselves, especially from those who are known to have a record of being not only a violent felon, but a convicted sex offender. How is any woman or any female know how to protect themselves from a male working at a bar, which if you're on a university campus, one would assume, and everyone screams basic safety and security, that this type of person would not be working at a local bar at a university. October 9th. Upon a return to campus, Lauren ended the relationship with Roland, and when they were together in her dorm room. Following this, Roland held Lauren hostage and aggressively refused to leave. The next day, Lauren loaned her car to Roland to get him away from her. He later refused to return to the car. I don't want to know what happened when he spent the night. October 11th, Lauren's mother requested a security escort to help Lauren retrieve her car. She informed the University of Utah Department of Public Safety that she was worried Roland was a dangerous sex offender who would hurt Lauren. While Lauren safely retrieved her car, this incident was not entered into the record system, and no outreach was conducted with local police. The behavioral intervention team was also not engaged. Furthermore, this should have sparked an investigation to Roland's criminal history, and he should have been trespassed from campus. I don't know, trespassed from campus. Which, I mean, this could be why MPD did not know, because the university did not inform, and this has happened throughout. And I lost my spot. October 12th, Lauren reported receiving harassing and luring text messages to UUPS. Some of the messages told Lauren to kill herself. Lauren was advised by them to tell the sender to stop, and it would become harassment after that. She also advised not to meet with the individuals sending the messages and to forward additional communications. No victim advocate was brought in to work with Lauren. Her case was not reviewed by anyone specializing in this matter, and she was not provided with any resources that keep herself safe. No coordination with university housing or any other university units took place. October 13th, Lauren reported to them that she received more harassing messages. She also reported being sexually extorted by Roland, that she paid him $1,000, and that a second extortion attempt was taking place. She reported being fearful of Roland, given his stalking behavior, and she was informed she received an update on her case by October 16th. At this time, the police discovered Roland was a convicted sex offender. However, the police failed to investigate Roland's parole status and did not contact his parole agent, which would have allowed Roland to be contacted and his home and possessions searched. Again, he could have been kept away from campus at this time. Later in the evening, Lauren sought an update on her case in Salt Lake City Police Department and was transferred to UUPS. Again, no resources were provided to Lauren. On the 19th, Lauren sought another update from them. She had not heard back, and she explained she thought a police insider was sending Roland information as he seemed to know the case details. Lauren was referred to a detective in charge at UUPS. There was no follow-up occurred regarding the potential police insider leakage case information, and SLCPD did not provide any additional resources to Lauren. That day, Lauren spoke with UUPS detective and was informed they would be on vacation until October 23rd. The detective provided Lauren with their department email. How nice. And that the information would be forwarded, and was told to call UUPS dispatch if additional luring communications were received. So we'll dish it off. We'll hot potato it. That evening, Lauren forwarded email communications and screenshots that demonstrated Roland and his friends knew about the case. Again, no follow-up occurred with Lauren, and no resources given for safety planning were provided. She should have been provided with the contact information for someone actively working on her case. And I mean, I'm just reading this, and how scary. You have all these people, all these professionals, all these resources, and no one is, they give you an email, we're on vacation. Also on the 19th, security videos demonstrated Roland was at multiple locations on campus looking for her. October 20th, Lauren forwarded more emails, including documentation of Roland's criminal history and offender information. No follow-up. So she's now working her case. Hello? No follow-up with Lauren occurred, and no resources were provided. Roland again appeared in on-campus security. So the university is aware. And you have security, on-campus security, that do checks and rounds. I don't know the ins and outs of security for university campus security, but I would hope they would have a picture of him. Look out for this person. We've been told he's brought a firearm on this campus. You would think that would alert. October 22nd, University Housing met to discuss Lauren's case. It was reported that no additional information was available on her situation. No one had an update on Lauren's status, as no outreach had been conducted. That morning, Lauren contacted UUPS and informed them that someone was trying to lure her away from her dorm by posing as a deputy chief of police. Lauren was later reported seen on campus, Roland on campus, waiting for Lauren. Again, nothing. Later that evening, Lauren was murdered while walking back from class. She was abducted and drugged to a car where she was shot multiple times. This happened in 2019. 2018. 2018. Thankfully, Nicole K. Drumhiller did this case study and did all this work and was published in 2022. The Journal of Threat Assessment and Management. Thankfully, more people like Nicole, as well as all these other sources that are cited here, more and more people are doing research on this, because prior there was very little research done. When I was looking into this for school, a lot of them was 2001, 2002. Now it's more awareness 2011, 2015. And when you do research, you should try to keep it as close to date as possible, which when I was doing mine not too long ago, it was few and far between of the 2011, 2015, and 2018. And you definitely have to look for resources that are that have an association, American Psychological Association. Definitely look for a .org. I mean, there are some decent .coms, but mostly a .organization, where people really have to do their due diligence and really have to research and really have a thorough investigation on a case study where they look at the whole of the case, the impact, the role, best practices, victim-based case assessment challenges. This is very important because you always need to look for things and then see what was missing or what could be done in future. The timeline, the analysis, where there was failed coordination between units, the mismanagements, and the lack of training education. It's one thing to make everyone on campus who's receiving this federal funding to be informed and to educate and make sure that they read the documentation and sign at the bottom that they did it. You have to implement it. You have to take it seriously. The collection and management, I'm sure there was probably a lack of communication. Like I mentioned before in there, the system was down. That's not an excuse. There's paper, there's email, there's follow-up, victim advocacy engagements, more about the safety planning, the system and cultural issues, which, as it said earlier, this is a private matter. No, it's not. Not when you're on a university and she's a student. It is not. Especially when she came forward and her friends. Right there is enough. They came forward. And he worked. It wasn't like he was off campus or he wasn't within the area at a different state. He worked at the local bar. The mistrust between units, and then gender bias discussions. So when you look for information, you really need to make sure that they go through it and look at every little aspect. And then here's her references. You want someone who does a case study that has a lot of references. Not just 2 or 3. I mean, at least 5 is my rule of thumb. But when you do a case of this magnitude, you want to make sure that you get several references saying the same thing or close to. And make sure that there's revisions so that it's up to date. It's a working case.